Riley Fox adjusted her worn leather gloves and stepped through the energy barrier into the fighting pit. The crowd of alien spectators erupted in a mix of cheers, hisses, and sounds she couldn't identify from species she'd never bothered to learn about. Above her, the massive dome of the Crucible space station stretched into artificial darkness, dotted with viewing platforms packed with gamblers eager to watch her lose. Her opponent waited on the opposite side of the circular arena. Grim the Brutok stood nearly 8 feet tall, his 4 arms ending in claws that could slice through ship hull plating. His skin looked like granite mixed with old blood, and every muscle on his massive frame rippled with barely contained violence. The crowd loved him. He'd killed 17 opponents in this very pit over the past year. Riley yawned. The arena announcer, a chittering insect creature called Skix, spoke through the sound system in Galactic Standard. His voice carried the practiced excitement of someone who'd narrated thousands of deaths. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all classifications, welcome to tonight's main event. In the red corner, weighing 430 pounds of pure killing machine, the scourge of Kepler Station, the bone crusher himself, Grim the Brutok. The crowd roared. Grim raised all 4 arms and flexed, showing off scars that told, stories of battles won through sheer brutality. And in the blue corner, Skix continued, though his enthusiasm dimmed noticeably. Weighing 140 pounds, the human female who somehow keeps winning fights, Riley Fox. A few scattered cheers mixed with confused murmurs. Most of the audience was still trying to figure out how a creature so small and soft-looking had managed to survive 15 consecutive matches in the Crucible's deadliest division. Riley waved at the crowd with the same energy someone might use to greet their neighbor while taking out trash. She wore simple black combat pants, a tank top, and boots that had seen better decades. No armor, no weapons, no enhancement drugs that most fighters relied on. She looked like she was about to go for a jog, not fight a creature that could bench, press a hover car. The betting displays around the arena showed odds of 30-1 against her. Again. Grim spoke in his native tongue, a series of growls and clicks that the arena's translator rendered as, "I will make your death quick, tiny. Flesh creature, you do not belong in the pit with real warriors." Riley checked the time on her comm device. "Thanks, that's sweet of you. Quick question, though. Do you have any actual fighting experience, or is your whole thing just being big and scary? Because I've got dinner plans in an hour." The Brutok's 4 eyes narrowed. In his culture, showing disrespect to a warrior before battle was an insult punishable by creative dismemberment. He began to circle her, each step making the arena floor vibrate. Riley stood in place, hands in her pockets, watching him move. "Okay, I can see you're doing some kind of intimidation dance here. It's very nice, very traditional. But could you maybe speed it up? I want to grab food before the good places close." Skix activated the combat timer. "Fighters ready? Begin!" Grim charged with a roar that made the arena walls shake. 4 arms spread wide to grab, crush, and tear. 300 years of Brutok warrior tradition powered his attack. His species had conquered 12 worlds through superior combat skills. Riley sidestepped. The massive alien thundered past her, all that momentum carrying him into the arena wall with a sound like a building collapse. He bounced off, shook his head, and spun around with surprising speed for something his size. "Not bad," Riley said, genuinely impressed. "You recover quick. Most people would be dizzy after hitting a wall that hard." Grim snarled and came at her again, this time leading with his claws. He slashed at the space where she'd been standing, but she was already somewhere else, moving with casual efficiency around his attacks. "Question," she said while ducking under a swipe that would have taken her head off. "Do you guys have any fighting techniques besides charge and hope for the best? Not judging, just curious about the tactical doctrine." The Brutok's answer was another earth-shaking roar and a combination attack using all 4 arms. The display of coordination and speed would have impressed any military analyst in known space. Riley caught 2 of his wrists, redirected the other. 2 arms into each other, and used his own momentum to flip him over her shoulder. 430 pounds of alien muscle hit the arena floor hard enough to crack the reinforced surface. "Huh," she said, looking down at him. "That was actually pretty good. I had to use both hands for that one." Grim rolled to his feet, now breathing heavily. Confusion mixed with growing fear in his eyes. In 15 years of fighting, no opponent had ever tossed him around like he was a child's toy. "You know what?" Riley continued. "I like you. You're trying hard. You're creative with the forearm thing, and you haven't started crying or calling for help yet. That puts you in the top 3 opponents I've faced this month." The Brutok charged again, desperation driving him now. He threw everything he had into a final assault, claws and fists and raw alien fury. Riley caught his lead arm, spun him around, and gently placed him in a sleeper hold. "Shh," she said softly as his struggles weakened. "Just take a little nap." Grim's eyes rolled back and he went limp. The arena fell silent. Riley checked her timer. 43 seconds. She looked up at the crowd, then at the stunned announcer's booth where Skix was frantically checking his equipment to make sure the fight had actually happened. "Really?" she called out, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "I didn't even get warmed up. This is supposed to be the deadliest fighting pit in 3 sectors, and I'm more tired from walking to the arena than I am from the actual fight." She helped Grim to his feet as the medical team rushed in. The Brutok stared at her with something approaching religious awe. "You fought with honor," she told him in his own language, having picked up the phrase from other defeated opponents. "Good technique on that spinning claw combo. Work on your footwork, though." The crowd started to buzz as the implications sank in. The human hadn't just won. She'd won while offering constructive criticism. Riley walked to the center of the arena and looked up at Skix's booth. "Hey, bug guy. Yeah, you with the microphone. Can we talk? Because if this is the best you can do for competition, I'm thinking about taking my business elsewhere. There's gotta be someone in this galaxy who can at least make me break a sweat." Skix's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed what he'd just witnessed. The human was complaining about the quality of entertainment. She was treating combat with deadly predators like a customer service issue. The betting boards flickered and went dark, as confused bookmakers tried to calculate odds for someone who appeared to exist outside the normal laws of risk and probability. Riley waved at the crowd again and headed for the exit. "Think about it," she called back to Skix. "I'll be in the cantina. Get me something that lasts at least 5 minutes, or I'm finding a new arena." The greatest fighting pit in the Outer Rim had just been given an ultimatum by a bored human who treated their deadliest champion like a training dummy, and everyone in the stadium knew she meant it. 3 weeks later, Riley sat in her cramped quarters aboard the freighter Lucky Break, reading messages from fight promoters across the galaxy. Word had spread fast about the human who treated deadly combat like a mild inconvenience. Every arena, owner, gladiator school, and underground fighting ring wanted a piece of the action. Her comm device chimed with an incoming call from Skix. The insectoid's image flickered to life, his compound eyes bright with excitement and desperation. "Riley Fox, honored warrior, I have found exactly what you requested. 6 Fenris beasts, fresh from the hunting preserves of Titan 7th. Never defeated when fighting as a pack. Each one weighs 200 pounds of pure predatory instinct." Riley looked up from the technical manual she'd been reading about hyperspace engine maintenance. "Fenris beasts? Those are the wolf-looking things with the razor claws and the pack hunting behavior, right?" "Correct. The most feared hunters in 3 sectors. No single warrior has ever survived an encounter with a full pack." "Okay, that sounds more interesting. When and where?" "Tonight, main arena. The betting houses are going insane. Some are offering odds of 50 to 1 against you." Riley grinned. "Only 50 to 1? I'm insulted." 2 hours later, She stood in a modified arena that looked more like a wilderness preserve than a fighting pit. Trees, rocks, and tall grass provided cover for the hunters that were already stalking her from the shadows. The crowd was smaller, but more elite, filled with military officers and combat specialists who'd come to study human fighting techniques. The pack attacked without warning, just as they would in the wild. 6 shapes exploded from concealment, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Each beast was a perfect killing machine, built for speed, stealth, and teamwork. Riley dodged the first attacker, caught the second by its throat, and used it as a club to knock down the third. The remaining 3 beasts regrouped and circled her, intelligent eyes calculating new attack vectors. "Not bad," she said, still holding the unconscious beast like it was a large dog. "You guys actually work together instead of just charging. Blindly. That's refreshing." The pack leader, a magnificent creature with silver fur and scars from countless hunts, made a series of low growls that seemed to direct the others. They spread out, preparing for a coordinated assault from multiple angles. Riley gently set down the unconscious beast and gave it a pat. "Stay here, buddy. I'll deal with your friends and we can all take a nap together." The final attack came from all directions at once, 600 pounds of fang and claw converging on a single point. It was the kind of assault that had brought down prey 10 times their size. Riley was no longer in that point when they arrived. She moved through the pack like she was dancing, each step placing her exactly where the beasts couldn't reach her. A touch here, a gentle redirect there, and one by one, the Fenris hunters found themselves unconscious and carefully arranged in a neat pile. The pack leader was last, and it fought with intelligence as well as instinct. It feinted, backtracked, and tried to use the terrain to its advantage. Riley actually had to pay attention for almost 30 seconds. "You're smart," she told it as she avoided another cleverly planned ambush. "I respect that. Most things just try to overpower me. You're actually thinking." When she finally caught the pack leader in the same gentle sleeper hold she'd used on Grimm, she whispered, "Good fight. Your pack should be proud. Total time, 2 minutes, 12 seconds. The crowd sat in stunned silence as Riley helped the unconscious beasts to their feet. The Fenris pack, once revived, gathered around her with something approaching worship. The pack leader actually licked her hand. "Skix," she called to the announcer's booth. "These guys are great. Can I keep them? They're way more interesting than most of the people I fight." 1 week later, she faced a cyber gladiator on the industrial world of Forge Prime. The arena was a maze of machinery and molten metal, perfect for the enhanced warrior who'd never lost a match in 7 years of competition. Caney the Augmented was more machine than flesh, his body modified with the finest military hardware 3 governments could provide. Plasma weapons were built into his arms. His reflexes were computer-enhanced, and his tactical software could process 1,000 combat scenarios per second. He opened the fight with a barrage of plasma fire that turned sand to glass and metal, to vapor. The crowd cheered as the arena filled with smoke and the sound of destruction. "Are you holding back?" Riley's voice came from somewhere in the smoke. "Because if this is your best effort, I'm genuinely concerned about your species. Survival instincts." Caney's sensors swept the arena, trying to lock onto the human's heat signature. His targeting computer showed multiple contacts, all false readings created by the heated metal and scattered debris. Riley's hand tapped him on the shoulder. He spun around, weapons charging, tactical systems screaming warnings. She stood close, enough to touch, completely relaxed, as if deadly energy weapons pointed at her face were no more threatening than a gentle breeze. "Quick question," she said. "Did you spend more money on weapons or on sensors? Because your situational awareness could use some work." Caney fired at point-blank range. The plasma blast was powerful enough to punch through battle tank armor. Riley wasn't there anymore. "Also," her voice came from behind him, You might want to work on your close-quarters combat protocols. All that fancy tech doesn't help much when someone gets inside your optimal firing range. The cyber gladiator spun, slashed, and fired in a pattern that should have covered every possible escape route. His computer brain processed trajectories, calculated probabilities, and predicted movement patterns with mechanical precision. Riley appeared next to him and gently unplugged a cable. From the back of his neck, Kane's enhanced systems flickered and died. Without his computer assistance, he was just a confused man with expensive hardware he no longer remembered how to use properly. "Don't worry," Riley said, catching him as he fell. "It's not permanent. You'll boot back up in a few minutes. Might want to invest in some manual combat training, though. Time: 1 minute, 37 seconds. The final test came 2 weeks later on the prestigious core world of New Geneva. The opponent was Titan, former Galactic champion, winner of 43 consecutive matches, and the closest thing the civilized galaxy had to a perfect warrior. He stood 7 feet tall, with the refined musculature of someone who dedicated his entire life to the art of combat. His people, the Valorians, were warrior poets who viewed fighting as both science and art. "Human," he said in accented galactic standard, "I have studied recordings of your previous matches. You possess remarkable skill, but you have not yet faced a true master of the combat arts." Riley looked genuinely interested for the first time in months. "Really? Okay. That sounds promising. What's your background?" 60 years of training in 17 different martial disciplines. Champion of 5 worlds. Veteran of the Hegemony War. Student of the ancient masters. I have never been defeated in single combat. 60 years? Wow, that's dedication. And you actually study different styles instead of just trying to hit things really hard? Combat is poetry written in motion, human. Every strike has meaning. Every defense tells a story. You fight with natural talent, but talent without discipline is chaos. The match began, and for the first time since arriving in galactic space, Riley found herself impressed. Titan moved like water, each technique flowing seamlessly into the next. His attacks came from unexpected angles, his defenses turned her. Strikes into counters, and his footwork was a masterpiece of efficiency and grace. Riley actually had to concentrate. For 4 whole minutes, the arena witnessed something unprecedented. The human was being challenged. Not threatened, not overpowered, but forced to think and adapt and use skills she rarely needed. "This is great," she said, blocking a combination that would have hospitalized most fighters. "You actually know what you're doing. I can see why you're famous." Titan pressed his advantage, combining techniques from different martial arts in ways that created entirely new forms of attack. It was beautiful, deadly, and completely ineffective. Riley caught his final strike, held his wrist gently, and smiled. "That was amazing. Seriously, that was the most fun I've had in months. Want to go get dinner and talk about fighting techniques?" Titan found himself unconscious before he could answer. 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Her new record. As the medical team revived the former champion, Riley walked to center arena and looked up at the crowd of core world elite who'd come to see her finally defeated. "That was better," she announced. "Still disappointing in terms of actual challenge, but definitely better technique. Does anyone know if this Titan guy teaches classes? Because he's got some interesting ideas about angle of attack." In the VIP section, a figure in military uniform watched the human with growing concern. Commander Voss of the Draknari Hegemony had seen enough. The reports were true. The human didn't just win fights, she treated them like educational seminars. And if one human could casually defeat the galaxy's finest warriors while offering constructive criticism, what did that say about humanity as a whole? It was time for the hegemony to take direct action. High Admiral Zareth of the Draknari Hegemony studied the battle reports spread across his command table aboard the Dreadnought Dominator. Each document told the same impossible story. A single human female was systematically dismantling the galaxy's understanding of combat superiority. Commander Voss stood at attention beside the table, his scaled hide bearing fresh scars from what the medical reports diplomatically called training accidents. The truth was more embarrassing. He'd tried to capture the human personally and ended up unconscious in a supply closet with a note pinned to his uniform that read, "Thanks for the workout. Try using your left arm more." "Explain to me again," the High Admiral said in their clicking language, "how one primitive human has made our entire military doctrine look like the fumbling of children." Voss's throat sac deflated with shame. "She doesn't fight like anything we've encountered, sir. Our warriors train against opponents who want to win. She fights like someone who's already won and is just going through the motions." And this bothers. "Our soldiers? It terrifies them, sir. When you face an enemy who treats your best efforts like a mild inconvenience, it breaks something inside your fighting spirit. Our finest warriors are requesting transfers to desk duty after sparring with recordings of her matches." The High Admiral's claws scraped against the metal table. For 300 years, the Draknari had built their empire on a simple truth. They were the galaxy's apex predators. Their military might was unquestioned, their warrior culture supreme. Now one small human was making them look like incompetent children. "What about Warlord Krex?" Voss brightened slightly. "He's eager to face her, sir. Claims that all previous opponents were weaklings who didn't understand true Draknari combat doctrine. Krex was their finest warrior, veteran of the Titan Rebellion, conqueror of 17 worlds. If anyone could restore Draknari pride, it would be him. Arrange the match. Broadcast it across all hegemony space. Let our people see what happens when a human faces a true Draknari warrior." 2 days later, Riley stepped into the most elaborate arena she'd ever seen. The Golden Coliseum of Hegemony Prime seated 500,000 spectators and was considered the ultimate proving ground for warrior species. The crowd wasn't just alien. It was hostile, filled with Draknari military personnel who'd come to watch their champion destroy the upstart human. Her opponent knelt in the center of the arena, surrounded by ceremonial weapons arranged in precise patterns. Warlord Krex was impressive even by alien standards, his reptilian form covered in ritual scars that told stories of 100 victories. Each scar had been earned in mortal combat against worthy foes. The pre-fight ceremony began with traditional Draknari war. Chants, weapon blessings, and intimidation displays designed to break an opponent's will before the actual fighting started. Krex performed each ritual with practiced precision, his movements sharp and purposeful. Riley sat down cross-legged on the arena floor and pulled out her comm device. The chanting faltered as spectators tried to process what they were seeing. The human was checking messages while their greatest warrior performed sacred pre-battle rites. "Sorry," she called out to Krex, who had paused mid-ritual. "Don't mind me. This is really interesting to watch. Very traditional. Are you going to fight me or perform interpretive dance? Because I have dinner plans and I'd like to know how to schedule my evening." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. In Draknari culture, interrupting a warrior's preparation ritual was an insult punishable by death. Krex's yellow eyes narrowed to slits. "Human, you will show respect for the ancient ways, or I will make your death last for days." Riley looked up from her device. "Okay, I respect that you take this seriously. It's clearly important to you, and tradition has value. But could you maybe speed it up a little? I've got a reservation at this Altarian place that's supposed to have amazing food and they close in 2 hours." The arena announcer, a nervous Draknari official who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, activated the combat systems. Force fields hummed to life, medical teams took position, and recording equipment focused on the two fighters. By order of the High Command, this match will demonstrate Draknari supremacy over all lesser species. Warlord Krex, champion of champions, will now destroy the human pretender. Krex rose to his feet and selected his weapon, a curved blade that had never failed to draw blood. He moved into a fighting stance that was both beautiful and deadly, the result of decades of training and natural predatory instincts. Riley stood up, brushed dust off her pants, and stretched casually. Nice sword. Is that traditional Draknari steel? The balance looks good from here. The match began. Krex attacked with everything he'd learned in 60 years of warfare. His blade work was poetry in motion, each strike flowing into the next with lethal precision. He fought with the accumulated wisdom of his warrior ancestors, using techniques that had conquered star systems. Riley dodged, weaved, and occasionally ducked under attacks that would have bisected a normal opponent. She moved with casual efficiency, as if she was avoiding raindrops rather than deadly weapons. "Good technique," she said, slipping past a thrust that should have skewered her. "I can see why you guys rule most of the galaxy. That spinning combo was especially nice. Very creative use of momentum." Krex pressed his attack, adding raw power to skilled technique. His strikes became faster, more desperate. Sweat beaded on. His scaled hide as he poured everything into destroying this impossible opponent. "Question," Riley said, catching his sword hand and holding it steady while she examined the blade. "Is this ceremonial, or do you actually use weapons like this in battle? Because it's gorgeous, but it seems a little impractical for modern warfare." The crowd watched in horrified silence as their champion struggled to free his weapon from the human's casual grip. Krex strained with all his strength, muscles bulging, but he might as well have been trying to move a mountain. "Seriously, though," Riley continued, "your fundamentals are solid. Someone taught you well. The footwork, the blade angles, the way you transition between offensive and defensive postures. Very professional." She released his hand and stepped back. Krex stumbled, off balance from his struggles. At the 3-minute mark, something unprecedented happened. Riley had been signing autographs for younglings in the front row while using her other hand to casually deflect Krex's increasingly frantic attacks. "Could you hold still for just a second?" she asked the warlord. "This kid wants to know how to improve his technique, and I'm trying to show him proper defensive positioning." Krex roared in frustration and threw himself into one final desperate assault. He abandoned technique for raw fury, striking with everything he had left. Riley caught him in a gentle but unbreakable hold, supporting his weight as exhaustion finally claimed him. "Shh," she said softly. "You fought with honor. That was actually pretty good. Better than most of what I've faced lately." When Krex finally went limp, unconscious from exhaustion rather than injury, the arena fell silent. 500,000 Draknari stared at the impossible sight of their greatest warrior defeated by a human who'd spent half the fight doing other things. Riley helped the medical team load Krex onto a stretcher, then looked up at the command box where she could see High Admiral Zareth watching with an expression of shocked disbelief. "Hey!" she called out, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "Military guy in the fancy uniform. Yeah, you. This was fun, but I've got a question. If this is your best warrior, what does that say about the rest of your military? Because honestly, I'm starting to worry about galactic security." She waved cheerfully at the crowd, who stared back in stunned silence. "Anyway, thanks for the entertainment. Let me know if you find anyone who can actually give me a challenge. I'll be around." The broadcast went out across hegemony space, watched by billions of Draknari who'd expected to see human arrogance crushed beneath superior alien might. Instead, they saw their champion treated like a training partner by a human who offered constructive criticism while defeating him. In his command box, High Admiral Zareth made a decision that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. If one human could humiliate their finest warrior while signing autographs, what would happen if they faced humanity's actual military? The Draknari hegemony was about to find out what happened when you escalated a conflict with someone who treated your best efforts as mild entertainment. The alarm in Riley's ship quarters woke her from a peaceful sleep. Lucky Break's sensors had detected multiple hyperspace signatures dropping out of FTL around her position. She rolled out of bed, pulled on her clothes, and padded barefoot, too. The bridge while munching on a protein bar. "Ship, what have we got?" The AI's synthetic voice carried a note of concern that programmers hadn't intended to include. 12 Draknari warships in standard attack formation. 2 heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, 6 fighters. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. Riley looked out the viewports at the impressive display of military might arrayed against her small freighter. The Draknari ships bristled with weapons that could glass a planet, their hulls marked with the battle honors of a dozen conquered systems. "Huh," she said, finishing her breakfast. "That's new. Usually people just send assassins or challenge me to duels. Nobody's ever brought a whole fleet before." Her communications system crackled to life. A scaled face appeared on the screen, yellow eyes burning with military precision and barely controlled anger. "Human vessel, this is Commander Voss of the Draknari hegemony. You have humiliated our finest warriors and made a mockery of our military doctrine. Surrender immediately, or we will demonstrate why the hegemony rules 3/4 of known space." Riley waved at the screen while using her other hand to plot an escape course. "Hey there, Commander. Nice to see you again. How's that shoulder I dislocated during our last meeting? I told you to ice it for at least a week." Voss's throat sac inflated with rage. "You will surrender now, or we will take you by force. You are one small ship against the might of the hegemony navy." "Yeah, about that," Riley said, strapping herself into the pilot's seat. "I've got dinner plans tonight on Altair 7, and this whole surrender to overwhelming military force thing doesn't really fit my schedule. Rain check?" She cut the transmission and fired up Lucky Break's engines. The modified freighter might look like a rust bucket, but she'd spent 3 years and most of her arena winnings upgrading every system to military specifications. "Ship, play something energetic. This might take a while." Classical Earth music filled the bridge as Riley threw her vessel into a sharp turn that would have liquefied a normal human. The Draknari formation reacted immediately, fighters peeling off to intercept while the larger ships moved to cut off escape routes. Riley opened a general communication channel so all the Draknari ships could hear her. "Okay, guys, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to fly through your formation, probably disable a few of your ships, and head for that asteroid field over there. You're going to chase me because that's what military doctrine says to do. But here's some free tactical advice. Maybe don't bunch up so tight. It makes you vulnerable to coordinated attacks." Commander Voss's voice crackled with static and fury. "All ships, open fire! Disable her engines, but leave her alive for questioning." The space around Riley's ship lit up with energy weapons and missile trails. The Draknari were firing to disable. Not destroy, but there was enough firepower being thrown around to level a city. Riley flew through the barrage like she was navigating a gentle rain shower. Her ship twisted, rolled, and danced between energy beams that missed by inches. When a missile lock achieved tone, she'd drop chaff or use the nearest Draknari ship as cover. "Your lead fighter is coming in too steep," she broadcast while performing. A barrel roll that brought her under the belly of a destroyer. "He's going to overshoot and present his engines as a target. There, see? Called it." The fighter pilot, following standard intercept doctrine, had indeed come in too aggressively. Riley's prediction proved accurate when he overshot her position and found himself directly in the firing line of his own fleet's weapons. "This is why coordination training exists," Riley continued helpfully. "You can't just throw ships at a problem and hope for the best. Someone's going to get hurt." She reached the asteroid field with the entire Draknari fleet in pursuit. Exactly as she'd predicted, the massive rocks and debris clouds would level the playing field, forcing the larger ships to maneuver carefully while giving her smaller vessel room to operate. "Welcome to my office," she announced as Lucky Break disappeared into the swirling maze of stone and metal. Commander Voss ordered his ships into standard search formation, a textbook maneuver designed to flush out hidden enemies. It was exactly what Riley had been counting on. She struck from ambush, using the asteroids for cover and surprise. Her first target was a destroyer that had strayed too far from the formation. A few precise shots to its engine mounts left it drifting helplessly, crew unharmed but ship disabled. "Ship number 1 down," she reported cheerfully. "Crew's fine, but they're going to need a tow. Maybe don't spread your formation so wide next time." The remaining ships closed ranks and began a systematic sweep of the asteroid field. It was professionally done, the kind of operation that had secured Draknari dominance for centuries. Riley picked them off one by one. She used gravitational slingshots around larger asteroids to build up speed, appearing and disappearing like a ghost in the cosmic debris. Each attack was precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy, leaving Draknari crews alive but their ships powerless. "Your sensor grid has a blind spot about 30 degrees to starboard," she mentioned while disabling fighter number 4. "I've been using it for the last 20 minutes. You might want to adjust your scanner array." Commander Voss, watching his fleet being systematically dismantled by a single opponent, began to understand why his warrior culture was having such problems with this human. She wasn't just defeating them, she was teaching a master class in tactical awareness while doing it. "How?" he demanded over the comm. "How is one ship defeating an entire battle group?" Riley's voice came back calm and educational. "Well, you guys fight like you've always had numerical and technological superiority, which makes sense given your military history. But you're not really prepared for an opponent who's used to being outnumbered and outgunned." She demonstrated by using debris from a destroyed asteroid to blind the sensors of a cruiser, then slipping in close to disable its weapons with surgical precision. "The thing about humans," she continued conversationally, "is that we got good at fighting by fighting each other for thousands of years. You learned to fight by conquering people weaker than you. We learned by fighting equals. When only Commander Voss's command ship remained operational, Riley performed her most audacious move yet. She docked with the Draknari flagship without permission, cutting through their hull with precision tools and walking onto their bridge while they were still trying to figure out what had happened. The bridge crew raised weapons, a dozen plasma, rifles trained on the small human who'd just appeared in their most secure location. Riley calmly walked past them, disarming each soldier with gentle efficiency while continuing her conversation. "Don't feel bad about this," she told them, collecting weapons like she was clearing a table. "Your tactics are fine against conventional opponents. You just haven't adapted to fighting someone who thinks differently." Commander Voss stared at her from his command chair, torn between admiration and terror. "What do you want from us?" Riley settled into an empty chair and looked around the bridge with professional interest. "Nice ship. Good layout, efficient crew stations. Very military. To answer your question, I want you to stop hunting me. I also want you to spread the word that humans prefer to be left alone." "And if we refuse?" Riley shrugged, a gesture that somehow looked more threatening than any weapon display. "Then I'll have to get creative. And trust me, you don't want to see what humans do when we're actually trying. This whole thing, disabling your fleet, boarding your ship, having this conversation, this is me being gentle." She stood up and walked to the main view screen, which showed the debris field that had once been the pride of the Draknari Navy. 11 ships drifted powerless but intact, their crews alive and their hulls barely scratched. "Look at this," she said, gesturing at the screen. "I could have destroyed every ship in your fleet in the first 10 minutes. Instead, I spent an hour carefully disabling them while making sure nobody got hurt. Do you know why?" Voss remained silent, but his throat sac had deflated completely. "Because I like you guys. You're professional, you fight with honor, and you actually tried to coordinate your attacks instead of just charging blindly. That shows intelligence and discipline. But you made one critical error." "What error?" Riley turned from the screen to face him directly. You assume that because I don't take your threat seriously, I can't be dangerous. That's backwards thinking. I don't take you seriously because I could be dangerous if I needed to be. She walked back to his command chair, moving with the casual confidence of someone who owned whatever space she happened to occupy. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to collect your ships, repair what needs repairing, and head home. You're going to tell your High Admiral that humanity isn't interested in conquest, politics, or territorial disputes. We just want to be left alone to do our own thing. And if the High Admiral decides you're too dangerous to leave alone? Riley's smile didn't reach her eyes. Then he'll learn the difference between a human who's bored and a human who's motivated. Trust me, Commander, you don't want to see that difference. She headed for the airlock, then paused and looked back. By the way, your tactical officer has good instincts. The way he tried to use the asteroid's magnetic field to mask your approach was clever. Give him a commendation. The tactical officer in question stared at her in shock. His attempt had failed completely, but apparently the human had noticed and appreciated the creativity behind it. Oh, and Commander, Riley added, work on your close-quarters combat protocols. All that firepower doesn't help much when someone gets past your outer defenses. She disappeared through the airlock, leaving behind a bridge full of confused and demoralized Draknari officers. Minutes later, Lucky Break undocked and vanished into hyperspace, heading for Altair 7 and that dinner reservation. Commander Voss sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the impossible truth. One human in a modified freighter had defeated an entire battle group without breaking a sweat. She'd done it while providing commentary, offering advice and treating the whole thing like a training exercise. His communications officer reported that all ships were responding, crews intact, damage minimal. The human had kept her word about being gentle. The scary part was that Voss believed her other claims as well. This had been Riley Fox being careful and considerate. If she'd wanted to hurt them, if she'd been fighting for her life instead of just trying to leave. He opened a channel to Hegemony Command and began composing a report that would change everything. The High Admiral needed to know that they hadn't just encountered a skilled fighter. They'd met a human who treated their finest military assets like training equipment, and she'd made it clear that this was her being friendly. 3 days later, High Admiral Zareth read Commander Voss's report in his private chambers aboard the Dominator. The document was thorough, professional, and utterly terrifying in its implications. One human had defeated a battle group while providing tactical instruction. She'd disabled their ships with surgical precision, boarded their flagship without permission, and delivered an ultimatum with the casual confidence of someone who could back up any threat she made. The most disturbing part wasn't her capability, it was her restraint. She could have killed them all and chose not to. That level of power combined with that degree of self-control suggested a species that was far more dangerous than their initial assessments had indicated. Zareth activated his secure communication system and sent a priority message to the Galactic Council. The Draknari hegemony was officially requesting immediate diplomatic contact with the human government. It was time to learn what other surprises humanity might have in store. 6 months after the incident with the Draknari fleet, Riley stood in the observation deck of her quarters on Earth, watching diplomatic shuttles arrive at the orbital station humanity had hastily constructed for first contact. The ships represented dozens of species, all of whom had suddenly become very interested in talking to Earth's government after word spread about what one human could do when mildly annoyed. Her comm device buzzed with yet another message from the Terran Diplomatic Corps. They wanted her to attend the formal first contact ceremony as humanity's unofficial representative. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd become Earth's most famous ambassador simply by wanting to be left alone, to eat dinner in peace. She was about to decline the invitation again when her door chimed. Director Walsh of the Diplomatic Corps stood in the hallway looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 6 months. "Riley, we need to talk." She let him in and offered coffee, which he accepted gratefully. Walsh had been dealing with increasingly frantic alien diplomats who all wanted to know the same thing: exactly how dangerous were humans, and please could they be friends instead of enemies. "The Galactic Council session starts in 2 hours, Walsh said. "Every major species will be represented, including some who've never bothered with diplomacy before. They're all here because of you." Riley sipped her coffee and looked out at the arriving ships. "Because I beat up some people in fighting rings? Because you treated their finest warriors like training dummies, disabled an entire Draknari battle group while giving tactical advice, and did it all while complaining about restaurant reservations. Do you have any idea what that looks like?" From their perspective, she considered this. Probably pretty weird. Most of them seemed to take fighting very seriously. Riley, they've built their entire understanding of galactic power structures on military capability. The Draknari conquered half the galaxy because they were the best fighters. The Valorians dominate 3 sectors because their warriors are unbeatable. The Fenris packs are feared across 12 systems because nothing can outfight them. And Walsh set down his cup with shaking hands. "And you defeated all of them while bored. You didn't just win. You won while doing other things. Some of these species are having existential crises because their entire cultural identity was built on being apex predators." Riley hadn't thought about it that way. To her, she'd just been looking for decent entertainment and maybe some exercise. The idea that entire civilizations might be rethinking their place in the universe because of her hobby was disturbing. What do they want from the meeting? Official diplomatic relations, mutual defense treaties, trade agreements, and most importantly, assurance that humanity has no territorial ambitions. They're terrified that if one human can do what you did casually, what could Earth's actual military accomplish if we decided to expand? 2 hours later, Riley found herself in the strangest meeting of her life. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive amphitheater filled with representatives from 47 different species. Each delegation sat in environmental pods suited to their biology, creating a rainbow of alien life forms unlike anything most humans had ever seen. The session began with formal introductions, but Riley could feel the weight of attention from hundreds of alien eyes. Conversations had stopped when she entered, and now everyone was trying not to stare while obviously staring. High Counselor Thrain, an ancient being whose species had mediated galactic disputes for millennia, called the session to order. "Honored representatives, we gather today to formally welcome humanity to the galactic community and establish diplomatic relations with Earth. We have all heard the reports of human capabilities, and we believe it is in everyone's best interest to ensure peaceful coexistence." Commander Voss stood in the Draknari delegation pod. His appearance drew murmurs from the crowd, as his encounters with Riley had made him something of a celebrity in military circles. "Honored Council," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I speak from direct experience when I say that humanity should be granted full membership status immediately. Speaking as someone who has faced human capabilities in person, it is much preferable to have them as allies than to discover what they are truly capable of when motivated." A representative from the Valorian Empire raised a scaled hand. "Commander Voss, your reports describe combat capabilities. That seem impossible. Are we to believe that all humans possess such abilities?" Riley raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Actually, if I could address that?" Thrain nodded nervously. "Of course, honored human representative." Riley stood up, feeling oddly formal in the diplomatic setting. "The thing is, I'm not special among humans. I'm just someone who used to be in the military and now fights for entertainment. On Earth, there are millions of people with similar training, and many of them are much better at this stuff than I am." The silence that followed was deafening. A delegate from the Hegemony Science Council spoke up, his voice tight with controlled panic. "You are saying there are millions of beings with your capabilities? Well, Not exactly my capabilities. I mean, I'm pretty good at what I do, but I'm hardly the best. Our actual military has people who make me look like an amateur. Plus, we've got athletes, martial artists, people who've trained their whole lives for combat sports. I'm probably somewhere in the middle of the pack. Walsh buried his face in his hands. They'd specifically briefed Riley not to mention Earth's military capabilities, and she'd just told the galaxy that she was average by human standards. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter as representatives frantically consulted with their home governments. Several species were already calculating the resources needed to evacuate their border worlds. Riley realized she might have said something wrong. Look, I don't want anyone to panic. Humans aren't interested in conquest or expansion or any of that stuff. We just want to explore, learn things, maybe set up some trade routes. The fighting thing is just something I do for fun. A small voice from the Catherian delegation spoke. Up. You treat Mortal Kombat as entertainment? Well, yeah. I mean, it's challenging. It keeps me in shape, and I meet interesting people. Plus, the prize money is pretty good. The Catherians, whose culture was built around avoiding conflict, at all costs, looked like they were about to faint. Counselor Thrain called for order. Perhaps we should discuss the practical matters of membership and diplomatic protocols? For the next 3 hours, the session proceeded with surreal politeness. Trade agreements were approved without negotiation. Territorial boundaries were established entirely in humanity's favor. Defense pacts were offered by species who normally competed for military dominance. Every proposal was some variation of, please take whatever you want, just promise you'll be reasonable about it. Riley found the whole thing deeply uncomfortable. These were advanced civilizations with rich cultures and impressive achievements, and they were acting like scared children because she'd won some fights. During a recess, she approached Commander Voss privately. This feels wrong. You guys are treating us like we're monsters. Voss's throat sac deflated thoughtfully. Riley Fox, may I speak honestly? Please do. You disabled my entire battle group while providing tactical instruction. You treated our finest weapons like training equipment and our best strategies like teaching moments. From our perspective, you demonstrated the casual capability to end our civilization if you chose to. But I didn't choose to. I went out of my way not to hurt anyone. Exactly. That level of power combined with that degree of restraint suggests a species that is either incredibly mature or incredibly dangerous. Most of us are hoping it's maturity. Riley considered this as they returned to the session. When Counselor Thrain asked if she had any final comments, she stood up and looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her with mixture of fear and hope. I know this is weird for everyone, she said. You're dealing with something new, and new things can be scary. But here's the thing about humans. We're not interested in ruling anybody or taking over the galaxy. We've got our own problems to solve and our own goals to pursue. She gestured to the diverse assembly around her. Look at all of you. Different species, different cultures, different ways of thinking. That's amazing. That's exactly the kind of diversity we want to learn from and be part of. We don't want to conquer you. We want to be your neighbors. The chamber relaxed slightly. As for the fighting stuff, that's just me. Most humans are explorers, scientists, artists, farmers, teachers. We're not a warrior species any more than you are. We're just people who happen to be good at adapting to new situations. A delegate from the Outer Rim territories raised a tentacle. And if someone threatens humanity? Riley's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Well, that would be a new situation. And like I said, we're good at adapting. The session concluded with humanity being granted full membership in the Galactic Council, along with territorial rights, trade privileges, and mutual defense agreements that were essentially blank checks. As the delegates filed out, Riley noticed that many of them were stealing glances at her. Not hostile looks, but the kind of careful attention people paid to natural disasters or other forces of nature. Walsh found her in the observation lounge, afterward, staring out at the departing alien ships. How do you feel about being humanity's unofficial first impression on galactic civilization? Riley watched a Draknari cruiser execute a perfect departure maneuver, its crew probably relieved to be heading home with peaceful accords instead of battle damage. Honestly, I just wanted to find some decent competition and maybe grab dinner afterward. I never meant to scare anybody. Well, you've certainly made an impression. Half the galaxy is terrified of us, and the other half wants to be our best friends. Riley yawned and checked the time. Speaking of dinner, do you know if that new Altarian place is still taking reservations? I've been wanting to try their food for months, but I keep getting distracted by galactic incidents. Walsh stared at her. Riley, you just reshaped interstellar politics, and you're thinking about restaurant reservations? She shrugged. I told you I'm not that special. I'm just hungry, and I hear Altarian cuisine is supposed to be amazing. As she headed for the door, Riley paused and looked back at the empty council chamber. Walsh, make sure they know we're friendly, okay? I'd hate for anyone to get the wrong idea just because I can't find opponents who last more than 5 minutes. She left to make dinner reservations, completely unaware that her casual comment about 5-minute fights had just caused 3 species to upgrade their military budgets and 2 others to begin serious discussions about relocating to different galaxies. In the end, humanity had joined galactic civilization not through careful diplomacy or technological advancement, but because one bored human had convinced the galaxy that it was much safer to be friends with creatures who treated interstellar warfare like a mild workout.